The fluorescent lights of Harrison and Whitmore Financial buzzed overhead like distant mosquitoes, a sound I had learned to ignore during my 3 years as a junior analyst. I was good at ignoring things. The way Charlotte Whitmore's eyes slid past me in the elevator. The way my reports were presented in meetings by people whose names weren't Mia Johnson. The way my coffee mug was the only one that mysteriously never made it into the dishwasher. My mama used to say, "Baby girl, you're gonna have to work twice as hard to get half as far." She told me that when I was 10, helping her fold laundry at the Riverside Hotel in Atlanta, where she worked housekeeping for 27 years. I didn't understand then. Now, at 32, sitting in my cramped corner cubicle while my white colleagues occupied offices with windows, I understood perfectly. That morning started like any other. I arrived at 6:47 a.m., 13 minutes before anyone else, because I had learned early that a black woman in a white space must always be above reproach. My desk was organized with military precision. My reports were flawless. My attendance record was immaculate. None of it mattered, but I did it anyway. "Mia, can you grab me a coffee?" Emma Richardson didn't look up from her phone as she passed my desk. She was 24, fresh from Yale, and had been promoted twice in 18 months. Her father played golf with Oliver Harrison. "The break room is down the hall, Emma. Same place it was yesterday." She stopped, turned slowly, as if seeing me for the first time. "Excuse me?" I said the break room is down the hall. I kept my voice neutral, professional. I had perfected this tone, neither aggressive nor submissive. A tightrope I walked daily. "I'm finishing the quarterly analysis." Her lips thinned. "Someone's feeling brave today." She walked away, heels clicking against the marble floor, and I knew that this moment would cost me something. It always did. The quarterly analysis was mine. I had worked on it for 6 weeks, staying late, coming in on weekends, triple-checking every figure. It was, if I could allow myself a moment of pride, brilliant. I had identified a pattern in the investment portfolio that could save the firm $12 million annually. This was going to be my moment. The presentation was scheduled for 2 p.m., and for the first time in 3 years, my name was on the agenda. At 1:45 p.m., I walked to the conference room with my laptop, my notes, and something I rarely allowed myself to feel: hope. The room was already full. Oliver Harrison sat at the head of the table, silver-haired and imposing, a man whose family had built this firm from nothing in 1952. Beside him sat his wife, Sophia, who occasionally graced the office with her presence to remind everyone of the social hierarchy. Charlotte Whitmore, the firm's managing director and Oliver's protege, was reviewing her phone. James Whitmore, Charlotte's husband and the firm's general counsel, whispered something that made her smile. And there, at the far end of the table, sat someone I had only seen in financial magazines and news articles. William Ashford. The Ashford. His family's investment fund was worth $14 billion, and rumors had been circulating for months that Harrison and Whitmore was courting them for a partnership. My steps faltered. Nobody had told me this meeting would include William Ashford. Nobody had told me the stakes had just multiplied exponentially. "Ah, Mia." Oliver Harrison's voice was pleasant but distant, the way one might greet a familiar piece of furniture. "Thank you for preparing the materials. Charlotte will be presenting today." The words didn't register at first. "I'm sorry, sir." Charlotte stood, smoothing her cream-colored blazer. "I made some adjustments to your analysis, Mia. Added some context that the presentation needed. You understand?" I understood. I understood that 3 years of being not quite ready and almost there had led to this moment. My work, my discovery, being handed to a woman whose greatest skill was being born into the right family. The analysis was comprehensive as submitted. My voice remained steady. Mama's voice in my head. "Don't give them the satisfaction, baby. Don't let them see you break." "It was a good start," Charlotte said. "Charlotte-y." And her smile was a knife wrapped in silk. But presentations at this level require a certain polish. Sophia Harrison laughed softly. "Charlotte has such a gift for these things." I should have sat down. I should have nodded and retreated to my corner cubicle and accepted this theft the way I had accepted 100 small thefts before. But something in me, maybe it was exhaustion, maybe it was the hope that had briefly flickered in my chest, maybe it was my mother's voice telling me I was worth more than this, made me speak. With respect, Mrs. Whitmore, the pattern I identified in the portfolio came from an algorithmic approach I developed independently. The methodology is documented in my personal files. The room went silent. Oliver Harrison's expression shifted from pleasant detachment to cold assessment. Charlotte's smile froze. "Are you suggesting," James Whitmore said slowly, "that my wife stole your work?" "I'm suggesting that credit should be given where credit is due." "That's quite an accusation." Sophia Harrison's voice dripped with the particular venom of a woman who had never been questioned. "From someone in your position. Someone in my position." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. A black woman, a woman from nothing, a woman who should be grateful to occupy space in their marble-floored kingdom. "My position," I said, "is that of the analyst who created this work." "Perhaps," Charlotte said, her voice silky smooth, "we should discuss your position more thoroughly." After the meeting, William Ashford, who had been silent throughout this exchange, leaned forward slightly. I felt his gaze on me, not the dismissive glance I was accustomed to, but something more attentive. When I met his eyes, I saw something unexpected. Recognition. Not of who I was, but of what was happening. He said nothing. I didn't expect him to. Men like him didn't intervene in scenes like this. They watched, calculated, and moved on. The presentation proceeded. Charlotte spoke my words, showed my charts, explained my algorithms as if she had birthed them herself. The room murmured with appreciation. Oliver Harrison beamed with paternal pride, and I sat in a corner chair, hands folded in my lap, learning once again what it meant to be invisible. After the meeting, Charlotte pulled me aside. "You embarrassed me in there, Mia." "I stated facts, Mrs. Whitmore." "Facts?" She laughed. "Let me tell you some facts. You've been here 3 years. You've been passed over for promotion 4 times. You have no allies, no connections, no future here. And now, you've made an enemy of me." She leaned closer. "I want you to think very carefully about what happens next." I went home that night to my studio apartment in East Harlem, a 4th-floor walk-up with a radiator that clanked and a view of a brick wall. I sat on my second-hand couch and called my mother. "They took it, Mama, they took my work." Her sigh traveled through the phone like a prayer. "I know, baby, I know. How do you do it? All those years, cleaning rooms for people who looked right through you. How do you survive it?" "You survive it," she said slowly, "by knowing who you are when nobody's watching. You survive it by being better than they can imagine. And sometimes, Mia, you survive it by waiting, because the truth has a way of coming out." I didn't believe her then. I was too tired, too angry, too bruised by decades of being told I wasn't enough. But my mother, as usual, was right. The next morning I found an envelope on my desk. No name, no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note. I saw what happened. I know what they did. If you want the truth to come out, meet me at Café Lumen at 7 p.m. Come alone. The handwriting was elegant, almost architectural. I stared at it for a long time, trying to understand why someone in that room full of people who had never seen me would suddenly decide to pay attention. I should have thrown it away. I should have known that hope was just another weapon that could be used against women like me. Instead, at 6:55 p.m., I walked into Café Lumen and everything I thought I knew about my life began to change. Café Lumen was not the kind of place I frequented. The prices alone would have consumed half my weekly grocery budget. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light on white tablecloths. The clientele spoke in hushed, moneyed tones, their jewelry catching the light like small captured stars. I saw him immediately. William Ashford sat alone at a corner table, reading what appeared to be a financial report. He was dressed casually, no tie, sleeves rolled to reveal forearms. But casual for him probably cost more than my rent. I almost turned around. This had to be a mistake, or worse, a trap. What would a man like William Ashford want with me? But he looked up then, and something in his expression, a gentleness I hadn't expected, made my feet carry me forward. "Miss Johnson." He stood as I approached, pulling out my chair like we were in another century. "Thank you for coming." "You wrote the note." "I did. Why?" He sat down across from me, and for a moment he just studied my face. Not with the dismissive sweep I was used to, the quick assessment that categorized me as insignificant, but with genuine attention. "Because what they did to you yesterday was wrong. And because I recognized something in you that I rarely see in anyone." "What's that?" "Integrity that refuses to bend." A waiter appeared. William ordered wine without asking my preference, then seemed to catch himself. "I'm sorry. Would you prefer something else?" "Wine is fine." It wasn't. Really. I didn't drink wine, but I was too off balance to assert myself. "I've spent 15 years in finance," William said when we were alone again. "I've watched good people get crushed by systems designed to keep them crushed. I've watched talent get overlooked because it came in the wrong package." He paused. "Yesterday I watched Charlotte Whitmore steal your work and present it as her own. I watched the entire room accept this theft because she is white and wealthy and connected, and you are none of those things." The directness of his words startled me. "Why do you care? You're one of them." "Am I?" He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "My grandfather built Ashford Capital from nothing. He was an immigrant from England with $50 and a dream. Somewhere along the way, my family forgot what it meant to earn things honestly. I haven't." The wine arrived. I took a sip to buy time, trying to read this man who defied every expectation I had formed over 32 years of dealing with people who looked like him. "The analysis you created," he said. "The $12 million savings." I recognized it immediately as exceptional work. I also recognized that the presentation style was completely different from Charlotte Whitmore's previous work. She didn't even understand some of the questions I asked her afterward. I noticed that. "So here's what I'm proposing." He leaned forward, and I caught the scent of something clean and expensive. "I'm in negotiations with Harrison and Whitmore for a potential partnership. I have leverage. I'm willing to use that leverage to ensure you receive credit for your work, and to protect you from whatever retaliation Charlotte is planning." "And what do you want in return?" The question hung between us. I had learned early that nothing in this world came free, especially not from wealthy white men offering salvation. "Honestly?" He held my gaze. "I want to spend more time with you. Not because I want something from you, but because you're the first person in a very long time who has made me feel like there might still be people worth knowing in this world." I should have laughed. Should have dismissed this as the worst kind of manipulation. But something in his voice, a loneliness that mirrored my own, made me hesitate. "You don't know me, Mr. Ashford." "William, and you're right, I don't. But I'd like to." Over the next several weeks I learned that William Ashford was as complicated as his offer suggested. He was the black sheep of his family, the youngest son who had questioned the ethics of their investment strategies, who had pushed for philanthropic initiatives that his brothers dismissed as naive. He had money and power, but he wielded them uncomfortably, like weapons he wished he didn't have to carry. We met for coffee, then dinner, then long walks through Central Park where he asked me questions about my life, my childhood in Atlanta, my mother's endless resilience, my dreams of building something that mattered, and actually listened to the answers. "My family will hate you," he told me one evening as we sat on a bench watching the sun set over the reservoir. "I want you to understand that before anything goes further. Because I'm black. Yes, and because you're not wealthy, and because you're not the kind of woman they can control." He turned to face me. "I'm telling you this not to discourage you, but because I believe in being honest. My mother is going to be terrible to you. My brothers are going to question my sanity. The society pages are going to have a field day." He paused. "But I don't care about any of that. I care about you." No one had ever told me they cared about me while simultaneously warning me of the storm ahead. It was the most honest courtship anyone had ever offered. At work, Charlotte Whitmore's retaliation was subtle but relentless. My access to key databases was mysteriously revoked. My expense reports were questioned with unprecedented scrutiny. Emma Richardson began CCing her father on emails about my attitude problems. Then came the morning I arrived to find security waiting at my desk. "Miss Johnson, we need you to come with us." My heart stopped. "What's this about?" "There's been a report. Some items have gone missing from Mrs. Whitmore's office. We need to search your belongings." They went through everything: my desk drawers, my bag, my coat pockets. Charlotte watched from a distance, her face arranged in an expression of concerned regret. Oliver Harrison stood beside her, arms crossed. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. But the damage was done. My colleagues watched the search with a mixture of pity and suspicion. The story would spread. Mia Johnson, searched by security. Where there's smoke, there's fire. "This is harassment," I said quietly to the security officers when they finished. "I want this incident documented." "Of course, Miss Johnson." But they didn't meet my eyes. That evening, William found me sitting in my apartment, unable to cry, unable to move. He didn't ask questions. He just sat beside me on my second-hand couch and held my hand while the city rumbled on outside. "I have something to tell you," he said finally. "Something I discovered today." I looked at him, waiting. "Charlotte Whitmore didn't just steal your analysis. She's been doing it for years. I had my investigators look into her background. Half of her career has been built on taking credit for other people's work. Always people without power, people who couldn't fight back." He paused, and I found something else. Something she desperately doesn't want anyone to know. "What?" "Her husband, James. He's been embezzling from the firm's client accounts. Small amounts, carefully hidden. Charlotte knows she's been helping him cover it up. The information should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like another trap. Information that could save me or destroy me, depending on how it was used." "How do you want to proceed?" William asked. "This is your decision. Mia, your strategy. I'm here to support whatever you choose." I thought about my mother, folding laundry for people who never knew her name. I thought about every report I had written that bore someone else's signature. I thought about every time I had swallowed my dignity to survive another day in a world that had never wanted me. "I want to bring them down," I said. "Not with scandal, not with noise. I want to do it so cleanly, so precisely, that they never see it coming." William nodded slowly. "Then we need a plan." Over the next 3 weeks, we built our case. William introduced me to a forensic accountant who traced James Whitmore's embezzlement through shell companies and offshore accounts. I documented Charlotte's pattern of plagiarism, gathering testimonies from former employees she had discarded along the way. Other women, other minorities, other people deemed expendable by the Harrison and Whitmore machine. Meanwhile, Charlotte's harassment escalated. My parking access was revoked. My health insurance paperwork was lost. One morning, I arrived to find racial slurs keyed into my car. "You should report this to the police," William said, his jaw tight with anger. "So they cannot investigate and make me seem paranoid?" "No." I photographed the damage carefully. "This goes in the file. Everything goes in the file." But it was wearing me down. I stopped sleeping. I lost weight. I started flinching at shadows, expecting the next attack around every corner. My mother called one night, sensing something in my voice. "Baby, what's happening up there?" I told her. All of it. William, the investigation, Charlotte's campaign of destruction, the fear that had become my constant companion. "This man," she said carefully. "This William. Do you trust him?" "I don't know, Mama. I want to." "That's something, at least." She was quiet for a moment. "Your grandmother used to say that the Lord puts certain people in our path for a reason. Not always to save us, we have to save ourselves. But sometimes to remind us that we're worth saving. I don't know if I believe that anymore. You don't have to believe it. You just have to act like it's true." Her voice softened. "Fight them, Mia. Fight them with everything you have. And if this man stands beside you through the fire, then maybe he's earned some trust." 1 month after our investigation began, we were ready. William had arranged a meeting with the firm's board of directors under the pretense of finalizing partnership terms. What the board didn't know was that I would be presenting, and that everything was about to change. The night before the meeting, William came to my apartment. We sat together on my fire escape, watching the lights of the city flicker like dying stars. "Tomorrow could destroy your reputation in this industry," I said. "You understand that, right? Standing with me against the Harrisons and Whitmores, and they have allies everywhere." "I know." "Then why?" He turned to face me, and in the dim light, I saw something vulnerable in his expression. Something that reminded me that wealthy white men could be lonely too. Could be searching for meaning in lives that had given them everything except what mattered. "Because some things are worth more than reputation," he said. "Because I spent my whole life watching people do the wrong thing for the right reasons, protecting their families, securing their futures, maintaining their positions. And I'm tired. I'm tired of being part of a system that crushes people like you. People like me. People who are brilliant and strong and deserving of so much more than they've been given." He reached for my hand. "Mia, I know you don't need me. I know you could do this alone. But I don't want you to. I want to stand beside you not because you're weak, but because you're extraordinary. And extraordinary people deserve witnesses." I had spent my entire life building walls, learning to need no one, expecting betrayal around every corner because betrayal had been the only consistent gift the world had ever offered. But sitting there with his hand warm in mine and the city spread out below us like a promise, I felt something shift. Not trust exactly. Trust would have to be earned over time. But possibility. The possibility that not everyone who reached for me was reaching to push me down. "Okay," I said quietly. Tomorrow we fight." The Harrison and Whitmore boardroom occupied the entire 35th floor of their Manhattan tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view of the city below, a reminder to everyone who entered that the people in this room stood above the common world. I had been in this room exactly once before, 3 years ago, as a nervous new hire being introduced at the quarterly all-hands meeting. Oliver Harrison had mispronounced my name. Charlotte Whitmore hadn't looked at me at all. Today was different. Today, I walked through those doors with William Ashford beside me, carrying 3 years of evidence in a leather portfolio and 32 years of survival in my spine. The board was assembled, Oliver Harrison at the head, flanked by his wife Sophia and their attorney. Charlotte sat to his right, James Whitmore beside her. 3 external board members I didn't recognize occupied the remaining seats. And in the corner, taking notes, sat Benjamin Cole, Harrison and Whitmore's head of compliance, a man I had never spoken to but who had smiled at me once in the elevator. Charlotte's expression when she saw me was worth every sleepless night. "What is she doing here?" "Miss Johnson is presenting today," William said smoothly, taking a seat, "as part of our partnership evaluation." "That's absurd." James Whitmore's voice was too loud, too sharp. He was already nervous. "She's a junior analyst. She has no business in strategic discussions." "On the contrary." William opened his briefcase and extracted a folder. "Miss Johnson has very strategic information that this board needs to hear." Oliver Harrison held up a hand, his expression curious rather than hostile. "I'm willing to hear what Miss Johnson has to say. Please proceed." I had rehearsed this moment 100 times. I had anticipated their objections, prepared for their attacks, armored myself against their dismissal. But standing there, facing the people who had spent 3 years trying to make me invisible, I felt something unexpected. Calm. My mother's voice in my head. "You survive it by knowing who you are when nobody's watching." 3 years ago, I began, I was hired as a junior analyst at Harrison and Whitmore. In that time, I have produced over 40 major reports, identified cost-saving measures totaling over $30 million, and received no promotions, no raises, and no credit for my work. "This is ridiculous," Charlotte interrupted. "She's a bitter employee with a grudge." "Mrs. Whitmore, you'll have an opportunity to respond." Oliver Harrison's voice was firm. "Continue, Miss Johnson." 6 weeks ago, I created an analysis identifying $12 million in potential annual savings from portfolio optimization. This analysis was presented to this board by Mrs. Whitmore under her name. She took complete credit for my work. This is documented in my original files, which are time-stamped and backed up on external servers. I handed Oliver Harrison a folder. These are my original drafts with metadata proving they were created weeks before Mrs. Whitmore's supposed edits. I've also included email correspondence in which I sent these drafts to Mrs. Whitmore for review, emails she never responded to. The room was very quiet. Charlotte had gone pale. But the theft of my work is not why I'm here today. I turned to face James Whitmore. I'm here because in the course of documenting Mrs. Whitmore's plagiarism, I discovered something much more serious. A pattern of financial irregularities in client accounts. Specifically, systematic embezzlement by your general counsel, James Whitmore, with the full knowledge and assistance of his wife. James shot to his feet. That's slander. It's not slander if it's true. I handed another folder to Oliver Harrison. These are the results of a forensic accounting analysis commissioned by Mr. Ashford. They document 47 separate instances of unauthorized fund transfers from client accounts to shell companies controlled by the Whitmores. The total amount is $4.2 million over 5 years. Oliver Harrison's face had turned to stone. He opened the folder and began to read. This is a setup, Charlotte said, her voice shaking. She's lying. William, how can you let this happen? She's manipulated you. Mrs. Whitmore. William's voice was cold. I would advise you to stop talking. Anything you say now can and will be used in the legal proceedings that are about to follow. Legal proceedings? Sophia Harrison's voice was sharp. What legal proceedings? The Securities and Exchange Commission has been notified, I said. They're opening an investigation based on the evidence I've provided. Additionally, I've been in contact with former Harrison and Whitmore employees, people Mrs. Whitmore has mistreated over the years. Many of them are prepared to testify about her pattern of plagiarism and workplace harassment. I pulled out one final folder. This includes documentation of Mrs. Whitmore's harassment campaign against me over the past month. Security searches based on false accusations. Racial slurs keyed into my car in the company parking garage, captured on security footage. Systematic attempts to sabotage my career through manufactured complaints and restricted access. The room was silent. Oliver Harrison looked at Charlotte, at James, at his wife. I saw something shift in his expression. Not sympathy for me exactly, but the cold calculation of a man realizing that the people he trusted had become liabilities. Charlotte, he said quietly. James, is any of this true? James Whitmore was sweating. Charlotte's perfect composure had crumbled. She looked at her husband, then at me, then at William. She's nothing, Charlotte said, her voice breaking. She's a nobody from nowhere. You can't possibly believe. I believe evidence, Oliver Harrison interrupted. And from what I'm seeing, the evidence is substantial. Mr. Harrison. I stepped forward, and for the first time, he really looked at me. Not through me, not past me, at me. I didn't come here seeking revenge. I came here seeking justice. For 3 years, I've watched talented people be overlooked because they didn't fit your firm's image. I've watched hard work be stolen, careers be destroyed, lives be diminished, all to protect the interests of people like the Whitmores. You could have come to me directly, Oliver said. Could I? When Mrs. Whitmore is your protégé? When she's married to your general counsel? When every pathway for advancement in this company runs through people who had every incentive to keep me silent? I shook my head. People like me don't have direct access to people like you, Mr. Harrison. We're invisible until we become inconvenient. The silence stretched. Sophia Harrison looked like she wanted to speak, but her husband's expression kept her quiet. Benjamin. Oliver Harrison turned to the compliance officer. Please escort Mr. and Mrs. Whitmore to separate conference rooms. They are not to leave the building until our attorneys arrive. Charlotte began to cry, not graceful tears, but ugly, heaving sobs. Oliver, please. I've given this firm everything. You've given this firm liability. His voice was final. Please go. Security appeared and the Whitmores were led away. Charlotte's last look at me was pure hatred. Not regret, not shame, but the fury of someone who couldn't believe they had been brought down by someone they had never considered human. After they were gone, Oliver Harrison turned to me. Miss Johnson, I owe you an apology. The words were unexpected. Sir, I built this firm on principles of merit and excellence. Somewhere along the way I lost sight of what that meant. He paused. What would you like? Beyond the obvious. Your work will be credited, the harassment will be addressed. Compensation will be provided. I thought about what I wanted. 3 years ago, I would have wanted validation. A year ago, I would have wanted promotion. 6 months ago, I would have wanted escape. Now, I wanted something different. I want a seat at the table, I said. Not as a token, not as a symbol. As an equal voice in shaping how this firm operates. I want a diversity and inclusion initiative with real power. Authority to review hiring practices, promotion decisions, workplace complaints. And I want it reported directly to the board, not filtered through management. Oliver Harrison studied me. That's ambitious. I've earned ambitious. For the first time, I saw something like respect in his eyes. Yes, I believe you have. He extended his hand. Welcome to the board, Miss Johnson. I shook his hand, and something inside me released. Not the wariness, not the armor I had built over decades, but the exhaustion. The bone-deep tiredness of constantly having to prove my worth to people who had already decided I had none. After the meeting, William and I walked through Central Park. The autumn leaves were turning gold and red, and the air held that crisp promise that New York does so well in October. How do you feel? He asked. Terrified, exhausted, triumphant. I laughed. Is it possible to feel all of those at once? I think so. He stopped walking and turned to face me. Mia, I need to tell you something. My heart stuttered. Here it comes, I thought. The catch, the condition, the thing that proves this was all too good to be true. My family knows about us, William said. My mother called this morning. She is not pleased. I expected that. She said things I won't repeat, things that made me realize I've spent my entire life trying to earn the approval of people who don't deserve my respect. He took my hands. I told her that if she can't accept you, she can't have a relationship with me. I stared at him. William, that's your family. Family is supposed to lift you up, not tear down the people you love. He paused and the word hung in the air between us. Love. I'm not saying this to pressure you. I know you need time. I know trust doesn't come easy for you. And I know I'm asking you to take a leap of faith with someone from a world that has only ever hurt you. What are you saying? I'm saying that I want to build something with you. Something real. Not a fairy tale, not a rescue narrative, a partnership between equals who see each other clearly and choose each other anyway. He squeezed my hands. I'm saying that you're the most remarkable person I've ever met, and I would be honored to spend my life proving that I deserve to stand beside you. I thought about my mother, working double shifts to put me through school. I thought about every door that had been closed in my face, every time I had been overlooked, every moment I had been made to feel less than. And I thought about this man, flawed, privileged, struggling with his own legacy, who had stood beside me when it would have been easier to look away, who had used his power not to save me, but to create space for me to save myself, who had asked what I wanted instead of deciding for me. I don't know how to do this, I said honestly. I don't know how to trust someone from your world. Then teach me how to earn it, however long it takes. I looked at him, really looked, and saw not a white savior or a wealthy benefactor, but a man who was trying, imperfectly and earnestly, to be better than the circumstances that had shaped him. Okay, I said. Let's try. He kissed me then, soft and tentative, like a question rather than an answer. And something in me that had been locked away for a very long time began, slowly, to open. 6 months later, I stood in the Harrison and Whitmore boardroom, now Harrison, Whitmore and Associates, reflecting new leadership, presenting the first quarterly report of our diversity initiative. The Whitmores had been prosecuted, James was awaiting trial, Charlotte had accepted a plea deal that would keep her out of prison, but end her career. The firm had changed. Not completely. Systemic change takes time, but enough that I could see the beginnings of something different. Young black analysts looked at me with hope instead of resignation. Women spoke up in meetings without fear of retaliation. The culture was shifting, slowly but perceptibly, toward something more just. William sat in the audience, not as a participant, but as a supporter. We had found our rhythm, two people from different worlds learning to build something new together. His family still disapproved, but he had built boundaries that protected what we had. And I had learned gradually to let someone in without waiting for the betrayal that didn't come. My mother came to visit that spring. She walked through the Manhattan streets with wide eyes, marveling at a world so different from the one she had known. "You did it, baby," she said, sitting in my new apartment, a real apartment with windows and a view. "You really did it. We did it, Mama. Everything I am is because of you." She held my face in her hands, the same hands that had folded 1,000,000 sheets of hotel laundry, and her eyes were wet with tears. "I always knew you were special. I always knew God had a plan for you. I don't know about God's plan, but I know about yours." I pulled her into a hug. "You taught me how to survive, and then you taught me that surviving wasn't enough, that I deserved to thrive." That evening, William joined us for dinner. He helped my mother navigate the menu, laughed at her stories about my childhood, and treated her with a respect that made my heart ache. After she had gone to bed, William and I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," I admitted. "For something to go wrong. Maybe nothing will." "You really believe that?" "I believe that we've earned some happiness." He reached for my hand. "I believe that two people who found each other against all odds deserve to enjoy what they've built." I leaned into him, feeling the warmth of his body against mine. "Tell me this is real." "This is real, Mia. You're real. We're real." He kissed my forehead. "And whatever comes next, we'll face it together." For the first time in my life, I believed him. The world hadn't changed, not completely, not everywhere. Racism still existed. Injustice still flourished. Women like me still had to fight twice as hard for half as much. But I had learned something important in that boardroom, facing down the people who had tried to erase me. My value didn't depend on their recognition. My worth wasn't determined by their acceptance. I had always been brilliant, always been strong, always been deserving. It just took 32 years and one impossible love story for me to finally believe it. And that, in the end, was the greatest victory of all.